Has anybody been here before? Has anybody been to an inclusive garden before? Or similar? Where at?
Eastern Field in Flint.
Oh wow. Anything similar here?
The raised bed. Yep.
Same type?
Yeah, same type
All right.
and take the top.
So if you're not familiar, these are obviously raised beds. You can see that this year they did the crops in here did better than most people's crops for one obvious reason. All that rain that we got that put back a lot of crops drained through these off the pavement, and so again it's another thing in your own garden to realize that if it's excessive rain, if you have good drainage, you'll have pretty much a bumper crop. Another significant part of the garden this year is there is a timered watering system, which also helped. We didn't have to use it that much this year, obviously. And it's not versus watering your own plot, but it augments between those periods. But you can see these are inclusive in that this is accessible to smaller children and adults. The one behind you here, those are designed again for wheelchairs to be able to go under. This oddball looking thing here is a pool liner that if you lay it down on that semi-level surface, it extends the ability for wheelchairs and walkers to go down. And if you looked inside, there's also some more vinyl that again can be used to temporarily create access where there's not access. So that's about it.
Like an above ground pool liner?
Yeah, these are old school, you know, you can get them, Craigslist, somebody says, hey, take my pool away. So otherwise it's fairly expensive to get, obviously, but it makes a great temporary, accessible pathway. And that's 30 feet. So it usually sits behind you. If I had done the grass today, that would be laying down. It also knocks the weeds down in wherever you are for that as well. And it's got two types of surfaces, so keep that in mind. You have a gritty surface and a not so gritty surface. But it's a great way to get access to your garden or to somebody else's garden that there's mud between here and there. It's an easy, cheap fix. What else? You can see the solar panel and the turbine. Those are designed to eventually be off the grid for running pumps and lights. You can see to the left down on the ground, those are 275 gallon, sort of a ubiquitous container for that. Okay. I'll show you some pictures inside of different ways those are used for gathering water. But literally you can have about 1,000 gallons of water. They fill up rapidly. This roof can produce tremendous amounts of rainwater. Unbelievable. Fill that up. There would be a pump in each of the top containers to start pumping water out to another reservoir, let's say a couple thousand gallons down there. All run off of the battery-powered electrical panel and turbine. It would also run lights. So keep that in mind, that instead of using city power and city water, which can be very expensive for two reasons, you pay twice for that. Besides, it's not very sustainable. So that's what that's about. And what else? Timer, watering, helps. One of the key things, if you would have come here early in the spring, these were overflowing and going into the aisle. So you can see that we added trellis to not only accommodate some of the vegetation, but out of the aisle. If you look, you'll see behind you there. Right here. And then if we did walk down to the end, you would see at the end the varmint hole about half across. There were a whole family of groundhogs that ate very well this spring and fall. We finally caught one, and we kept it only just for half a day to show people who come through the day, because there's different people who manage the different pots. So by the end of the day, I come back, somebody let it back out, which is not an easy thing to do. But there's basically 3 that live here, a couple under the building over there, and then one large one. So we have live. Any questions before I move on? have behind you here that Maya's sitting on is another two elements that this you can power via your legs, and this you can power via your arm. A generator would go in the middle so that you can generate power for a small PA or a small blender or things like that. It's another way to create a little bit of power. This stage, which would be ADA accessible, soon, is everybody aware of what ADA is? American Disability Act. You know the simple formula of 1 foot, 1 inch per 1 foot of rise. So if that's 8 inches, I'd need a ramp that's 8 feet long to be proper to the American Disability Act. So this would have to come out a little farther than that. And then have some ramp as well. But that's the intention. This is a stage to prepare a discussion. And at the other end, where the varmint lives, there will be another one of these. And then you'll also see the beds behind you here. Those are all from rescue garage doors. And all of the lumber except for the top, that's again all rescue material. Mostly pallets as well as you see over here. There's a tremendous amount of material in specific types of pallets, which help a lot in defining space. Those are pallets, and also they're benches, and they also define a space. Use them as trellises. The other thing you can obviously use pallets for is burning for cooking food, and also what we have in a clay oven, a clay kiln, a small wood-fired clay kiln. So that's another material that you can use. It's easily accessible for your garden. You can also use the process part to sell. That's another thing you can sell besides your beds or your worms or your compost or your vegetables. I think that we see over the next couple of years when you go to the farmer's market, there's going to be worms right next to the tomatoes and things like that. And again, rescue material starting to show up as a saleable item. And is everybody familiar with Jennifer Granholm's Cottage Industry Food Act? It's really allowed for the kind of hoop house community garden to go to the next level, sort of into the home, so that you can produce up to about $15,000 per person of product to sell in the market within reason of the law that's set up. And you're all familiar, per se, with the community garden / hoop house movement. The idea that you can put up a hoop house without, per se, a permit and not being a heavy taxable structure as long as you don't power it up with water, electricity, sewer. You can pretty much extend your growing season all the way through winter. And again, that allows for more people to participate as well over a longer period of time and with more food. But you'll see most hoop houses aren't accessible. So again, trying to get a percentage of accessibility into that movement would be a huge movement.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Can you say that again?
Having most hoop houses aren't accessible.
Yeah, but you need a permit for that?
No. The hoop house, as long as it doesn't have electricity, sewer, gas, that kind of a thing, it pretty much doesn't require the offsets or the permits that a barn structure would.
Is that state law or is it local?
Mostly state. Again, if you look at the Farm Act, which they're trying to change because of what's happening in Detroit, if you really want to have an eye-opening experience, look at the Detroit Works project and how they're trying to apply the Farm Act in Detroit, in a city, which then will apply to us here and in little towns and that. But the idea is to extend the ability to grow crops in a city, on a balcony, and in a larger farm setting, a community setting, without having to have a large-scale farm. And so that's what it's about, getting people access that normally wouldn't have access to growing year-round, the ability to do that without having to, again, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like a commercial kitchen. What the Cottage Industry Act did to the commercial kitchen allows you to not have a commercial kitchen within reason and produce foods. which is very important. Again, otherwise the food doesn't get to market.
Right.
Doesn't change that paradigm of what kind of food you have accessible locally. Is anybody aware of Tillian here? You know what Tillian is? Another key thing to look, because it needs your support right now. But I'll back up a second. Is anybody familiar with Selma? Is anybody? Okay. Selma is another one of those, and I'll back up even some more now that you know what that is. Are you familiar with soup? You know what soup is in Detroit? Okay, soup is one of those things that sort of comes from that phrase, you know, stone soup, you know, everybody brings something. Worst case scenario, you make stone soup. Soup is a place where they come together, put together food from locally sourced things, and have a sort of competition in sort of the food movement, but it's becoming more innovative as well. So 10 or 12 people present a project, and people donate money which pays for the food, obviously, but also then a percentage of that goes towards the winner of that innovative thing. So it's generally designed around food or food distribution and that. That's soup. Selma, which stands for Sewell, Street Man Arbor, Eberwhite, Liberty, and two other ones, they helped start the idea of funding local hoop houses. I mean, you couldn't afford to buy and build a barn, obviously. A hoop house is not an inexpensive item, but the difference between $3,000 to $7,000 and $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 is an extreme difference. So it started out as a place you could go get locally produced in a home meals, breakfast in particular, donate money. That money collected then started to be used to fund microfinance farmers who were already farmers, and now with Tillian is designed for people that aren't farmers to sort of teach them. So Selma started this movement of affording hoop houses, and they're up to about 75 now over a 3-year period, produced from food that came from hoop houses that they helped build. Their bailiwick, though, was they build them in a day. So they not only microfinance it from food, then they come together, get the volunteers, and build it in a day. The bump in the road there is after they leave, you're sort of on your own.
Yeah.
So the industry right now is suffering from that a lot of people are beginning to grow and get financed to grow. And it's not so much a competition. There isn't a group that consistently can come in and help you after that. So look at that. If you see a hoop house, try to meet those people, because they generally, if they're going to be there for 3 to 5 years, they're going to need your help, either your neighborhood help or your organization help. Otherwise, they fail. Thus gets to Tillian. Tillian, Washtenaw County and Ann Arbor Township and Ann Arbor decided to take that Selma model one step further, made it cheaper to get that, and made it so you didn't have to know how to farm, and they would finance you to come into Tillian, which you should go see. You should really look that up. It's Tillina. It's out off of, again, I forget. Well, look up Tillian. But if you went out there, you'd see half a dozen to a dozen hoop houses of different styles, and you'd see another half a dozen to 2 dozen plots, very large plots. The concept there, obviously, is essential equipment use and people and irrigation and that type of thing. But again, it needs your support right now as well. Your sons, daughters, or people that are interested in learning how to farm at a larger scale, they need more people to work in there. Because they have 150 acres now with access up to 500 acres. But those models are all tied together to these small models as well. The point that you're here about is obviously how to make things more accessible. So anything you can do to go to other places and question, hey, how does a person of different abilities come into this space in a positive sense? My daughter here is pulling on my shoulder, and my son, who's probably playing the computer in a computer lab, is they go to the school down the street, the Ann Arbor Learning Community. They were aware of inclusive gardening and that, but still haven't provided inclusion into their garden. And if you get the chance before you leave today, in a positive sense, go take a look at the school. They have a small hoop house, and they have a small garden, which is an incredible experience, but imagine, again, it's very difficult to access that. And so, again, you just going down there to look at it puts that back in the till for them to take a look at it.
And where is that?
It's this circle, which isn't really a circle, it's just down the street. So if you went out here to the road and stayed to your right,
By where they're working there.
to this side of it, you know where Social Security is, or that first road, the T is right across the street. So when you look to your right as you go out, you'll see a little hoop house, you'll see a school. Check it out. And again, the idea of garden/farm extends to this. This is called the Blacktop Farm. Blacktop Farm, the idea there is, the moniker is, most people raise food, we raise veg. This is sort of a tool and material library, temporary, but it's also called Blacktop because you're on a surface that's inherently accessible. And so for any city or a church or that, think of it like a big flea market. If you have a hard time understanding it, it's temporary to come in and get materials. Most of the materials are rescued or donated or reused. And it also allows for parking and having meetings, Wi-Fi, all kinds of things, or a central point to say, hey, we need more of this stuff in this area, or 2 towns over we need it, and then you move over. It's mobile, but that's that concept of that. Behind you here is an accessible shed for tools, and you can see that it's wide enough. I would prefer the door to be taller. Looking at the gentleman there, it would be an issue. But it's obviously an accessible space to store materials and access. And let's move over here for a minute. It's a library. Is anybody aware of the free library? You raise your hand. Can you explain this? You know what these are? Great.
It's an international movement. It started with somebody who wanted to pay tribute to his late mother and built a little box in front of his house with books for folks to take or a place for people to drop off books. And it's grown to an international movement. It's a grassroots thing. People create a box, try to keep it low enough that children and folks who use wheelchairs can access it and fill it with books. And you can take a book, you can leave a book. When you're finished with it, you can bring it back, you can pass it on, you can book hop from library to library. It's just an opportunity to cultivate community and literacy and sharing.
And what's it called?
There's a few different names, but Little Library is one, and
Book Box.
Book Box is another. And generally, if they're official, you would have a little brass tag down at the bottom. And if you're familiar with Wi-Fi sites before they became more ubiquitous, people would travel all over the place to go to that Wi-Fi thing or that brewery. People travel to go specifically to mark this off their list, you know. So they look on the international map and go, hey, I haven't been to the one in Berlin or over here. They actually is a place you go to meet people as well.
Well, and one particularly nice feature of the Little Free Library movement is they ask you to, I think it's send in $35 or so for your little brass tag, and then that money is used to build a library in a developing country, so that there's so that it's a global movement, and there's sharing books across borders.
And we designed ours to be what we call itinerant. And most things that the proverbial we do is itinerant, meaning it's only there for that period of time. The hoop house movement came out of that, came out of the community garden movement, where people were squatting and then eventually sharing space, and then eventually, hey, we need to extend that thus the hoops. And then you run into what's called weaponizing or armoring them up. People want to use them to park their cars in or put electricity in. That adversely affects everybody's ability to have that. At the same time, that causes the most extreme problem with hoop houses, which is what? You cannot live there like you can on a farm. You cannot leave stuff there like you can on a farm. So that's the next movement that's going on right now, is shared insurance, shared vehicles, shared materials, that kind of a thing, to extend that so that it goes that 3 to 5 years and then moves over. And if you are a farmer, you know that if you had a hoop house, and you'll see almost all the newer ones are mobile, that you grow a crop for a year to 2 years and then you move that hoop one strip over. Like if we could go out to the most current version of that, you would see, what are these poles here? The idea is you take them off one, you spin them around, and you put on the other. So every 2 years, your soil, exactly. Brilliant. Again, that again came out of the movement. Before that, it's like, hey, you build a barn or you build a farm. So you can see the advantages of that. What else? I was going to show you across the street. There's property that's not owned by us or the school, but we get to use it. We've cut trails through there. We tend to say 20%. We try to make 20%, which is a high number, accessible to everybody. So we do a bike program. You can see there's bikes here of different adaptive technologies. Partial trails there are, let's say, 20% off-road adaptive, meaning off-road is, you're getting a different workout than you are just going around the thing. So 20% are accessible to adaptive off-road, and then 20% are not off-road but not flat. So people can go out there. So if we went over there, which Maya was going to take you over there, that's Mallett's Creek, which runs right here. Mallett's Creek is one of the creeks that fed fresh water to Ann Arbor, back in the day. It still runs all the way through town. But the kids over at the school have a program where they go down to Mallett's Creek with the teachers and examine the stream and the technology of how stream works and that. So we cut trails over there, and if you went over there, there's a place to sit down with pallets, benches, and a small stage, which again is all itinerant. You can move it to different points. But if anybody wanted to go over there, Maya could take you guys over there and you could go walk in the stream. The joke there is, this summer, about 45, 50 teachers from all over the state came to visit the school because of that program. The kids taught those teachers what they knew. In the middle of summer, that day was the day it rained 5 inches in 3 hours. So they came, they saw, stepped into the stream. As they left, that huge thing came in. By the time they left, you had 30 feet of water running about 6 feet. And it went on for a couple hours. Very unique experience. A lot of water in a very short period of time. Any questions? Otherwise, I would like to take you in here and show you some pictures of stuff in case you didn't know what it represented.
This one's great too because they have some solar lights that they've adapted so the solar panels collect energy, and then by night the inside of the box is lit up.
Electricity use, all of this possible environments / many reasons things could go wrong within a building. Generally, in the olden days, it would go up by electricity and smells and all kinds of stuff, food or marijuana or whatever. But you want to eventually be able to sustainably grow food where you can, on your porch, on the church parking lot, wherever. So within reason, laws are designed to be amended, enacted, or taken away. So my answer to that is not unlike the Medical Marijuana Act, where if there's a federal jurisdiction and there's a state and then there's local municipalities all the time passed, we're going to put a moratorium on that. So in the Hoop House movement, it would benefit you to get that passed so that it remains that way. The key element is it's temporary, meaning the idea for the whole structure and the whole concept is that it's temporary, 1, maybe 5 years at the most, and move on. The idea isn't to have real estate in downtown Detroit flattened out in Hoop House. In the interim, that's okay, and then as laws and ability passes, that structure that replaces it, a high-rise or whatever, has some of those elements in it. Growing food on the roof, in parts of the building, If you look internationally, the greatest living architects right now incorporate that into the greatest structures that are built right now. And without that, it reuses water, reuses all of it, and it teaches you to go home and go, oh, I can do that, I can save that, or I can participate in that. The biggest element right now is not access to data, to know that, like that's what's great about the library thing. It accesses communities and people to that idea, and it expands out and moves to where it needs to go. Yep. You're welcome. I don't know what we have for time, but this is one type of hoop house here. In case you didn't know what a hoop house is, this is a great picture of the property across the street. Oh, yeah, here, us in the school, and this shows in Detroit where I have a house.